Hi, this is Daryl Myatt from Keller, Texas. Today is Wednesday, July 7th, 2010. Let's talk about Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to America this time as compared to last time. This first story out of Yahoo.com says Israel trumpets new era in U.S. ties after summit. Israel on Wednesday hailed a new chapter of warm ties with the White House after an upbeat summit between Barack Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu that was big on backslapping but short on detail. A president now working with the premier, not against him, thrilled the right-wing Jerusalem Post. This time, publicly at least, there were none of the harsh demands, none of the rhetoric, none of the patronizing. This is the morning of a very important day. Defense Minister Ehud Barak said the meeting between the U.S. President and the Israeli Premier after meeting U.S. senators in Jerusalem, the success of the Prime Minister's visit expresses the deep relationship between us and the United States and between the Obama administration and ourselves, Barak said after talking with Netanyahu by phone. Tuesday's meeting saw the Israeli leader accorded all the trappings of a visiting head of state, and the two leaders sought to project a friendly atmosphere, a marked contrast to the icy tone of their previous talks. Of course, relations plummeted to their lowest point in decades earlier this year following a high-profile spat over Israeli settlement building in occupied East Jerusalem. Occupied East Jerusalem? Anyway, it sounds like this meeting went quite well. Both sides were saying it was very positive, it was very upbeat. A lot of handshaking, big smiles, and photo ops for both sides. We'll see how that works out for each of them in the coming elections. Here's another story out of the Jerusalem Post. It says U.S. will attack Iran if it must. Senators, Defense Minister Ehud Barak in Jerusalem at the David Citadel Hotel today. U.S. Senators John McCain, Joseph Lieberman, and Lindsey Graham held a press conference where they spoke about several pressing foreign policy issues in the region. Senator Lieberman used some very harsh language at the Wednesday press conference to describe the Iranian nuclear program, saying the U.S. must do everything it can to stop Iran from becoming a nuclear power. The U.S. will address the Iran threat through diplomatic efforts and economic sanctions if we can, but through military action if we must, said Lieberman. They're saying that basically we cannot allow Iran to go nuclear. We cannot. And that would be a very bad thing if they were to be allowed to do so. So, we'll see what they do to prevent that from happening. It's getting to be crunch time. They need to do something quick if that's the case. Here's another story out of Reuters.com. It says Israel is prepared to take steps for peace talks, says Netanyahu. Now, Israel is prepared to take additional steps to ease Palestinian movement in the West Bank in a bid to coax Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas into direct peace talks, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said today. He was on ABC's Good Morning America and was asked about whether he was prepared to extend beyond September 10th a 10-month moratorium on new housing starts in Jewish settlements. Telling them they cannot grow, they cannot expand, they cannot build new houses is pretty ridiculous. And it looks like Mahmoud Abbas wants this to be a permanent thing. No more growth, period. You're done. Not gonna happen. It's funny to watch Abbas in his negotiations. I wish I could negotiate like this. He wants everything up front before he'll agree to sit down to negotiate. So all these preconditions are basically saying he wants everything he's asking for to be a precondition to sit down to negotiate. And it's like, well, what's going to be left to negotiate if you get everything you want up front? Probably a smart man, or really dumb, I don't know. I think the jury's still out on what the decision is in that case. Here's another story out of Haaretz.com. Top U.A.E. diplomat endorses striking Iran nuclear sites. It's a cost-benefit analysis. There will be economic consequences as well as protesting and rioting, but we cannot live with a nuclear Iran. The United Arab Emirates ambassador to the United States, Yosef Al-Otaiba, said that the benefits of bombing Iran's nuclear sites eclipse the short-term costs, such an attack would entail, the Washington Times reported. He goes on to say that no matter what, we cannot live with a nuclear Iran. This seems to be the message going all over the place today. And it looks like they're very close to being able to produce their own nuclear weapon. Here's an interesting story out of Depka.com. Obama accepts Israel's nuclear stance as reflecting its unique security needs. U.S. President Barack Obama indicated this at the end of his White House conversation with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday, which both called excellent. What he said was there had been no change in U.S. policy in the wake of Non-Proliferation Treaty Conference in May, which called on Israel to join the treaty. The U.S. President stressed that given its size, its history, and the levels of threat Israel faces, we will not ask Israel to take steps that endanger its security. Hey, every now and then even Obama gets something right. That's good to hear. Anyway, let's see what else. Here's something interesting out of the NewYorkTimes.com. Obama to bypass the Senate to name a health official. Here's just another example of our current president pretty much doing away with the Constitution, doing away with the way you're supposed to do things in this country. Washington, this is out of Washington, President Obama will bypass Congress and appoint Dr. Donald M. Berwick, a health policy expert, to run Medicare and Medicaid, the White House said today. Dan Pfeiffer, the White House Communications Director, said the recent appointment was needed to carry out the new health care law. The law calls for huge changes in the two programs, which together ensure nearly one-third of all Americans. So normally you have to have Congress approval to appoint anybody. Here's just another way our president says, you know what, I'm thumbing my nose at the Constitution. So, recently I've had a lot of people ask me, how do you know there's a God? How can you be so sure? You know, who's to say your God is right and this God is wrong and vice versa? And I just want to expound on this a little bit. Now, I know it really takes something called faith, but you have to look into it. I mean, only one God has the ability to foretell events in the distant future as evidence of His existence and the reliability of His Word. Okay, so revelation from God is needed. If there is a Creator God, it is logical to think that He would want to communicate with the ones He created. As humans, we show kindness, justice, intelligence, and we have other noble attributes. Since it is unlikely that a Creator would be inferior to that which He created, isn't it likely that He would have similar or superior qualities? Wouldn't you expect that such an intelligent Creator would want to communicate with His intelligent His creatures? God could choose to speak directly to us through angels or through visions and dreams. He could communicate any way He wanted to. A method that would ensure long-term results and be passed on from one generation to the next would be to create a written revelation that could be duplicated and distributed throughout the world. We know this as the Holy Bible. The Bible is actually a library of 66 books written over a period of 1,500 years by 40 different authors. It covers topics such as creation, history, prophecy, and God's plan for the world without any apparent internal contradictions. Parts of the Bible are over 3,000 years old, and it contains the oldest and most reliable records of ancient history ever written. The Bible claims to have ultimately one author, God, who chose to communicate appropriately at various times through different kinds of people. The inspired writer to the Hebrews says in Hebrews 1, verse 1 through 2, God, who at various times and in various ways spoke in time past to the fathers by the prophets, has in these last days spoken to us by His Son. Okay, there's 100% accuracy of Bible prophecies. People try to guess about the future, but there's only one God who has the ability to tell events in the distant future down to the last detail. In Isaiah 45, verse 11, it says, Ask me of things to come concerning my sons, and concerning the work of my hands, for I am God, and there is no other. I am God, and there is none like me, declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times things that are not yet done. Although the Bible is the most read, the most published book of all times, few realize that up to 30% of the Bible is prophecy. Some of these prophecies remain to be fulfilled in the future. The rest have been fulfilled with 100% accuracy. A book that foretells incidents concerning people, places, and events with 100% accuracy could only be the product of something supernatural. Psalm 22, for example, describes the crucifixion of Christ, yet was written 1,000 years before Jesus was born, and at least 600 years before crucifixion even existed. Another prophecy was written decades before its fulfillment, when Jeremiah claimed that Israel would be taken into captivity for a period of 70 years by the Babylonians. In another prophecy, Ezekiel foresaw the exact year in which Israel would be established as a nation, 2,500 years before it happened. You know, Jesus fulfilled over 300 prophecies concerning his birth of the Savior. There's many ways we know. In fact, if you look in Hebrews 11:1, it really takes faith. Now, faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. Without faith, it is impossible to please God. We know there's a God. Simply just look around. You can see his existence all around you. I pray you know him. God bless you. Hope to see you tomorrow.